All right, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to start our special panel for today, Scholars in Conversation with BRIN, AMINEF, and AIFIS, with the topic Research Collaboration in Indonesia, Navigating Policies, Permits, and Partnerships. So for this special panel, we have three panelists. The first one is Ibu Tri Sundari, who is Acting Director of Management for Research Permits and Innovation and Scientific Authorities at Badan Riset dan Inovasi Nasional, also known as BRIN. She holds a master's degree in health science from Queensland University of Technology. Hello, Ibu Tri, welcome. Our second panelist is Bapak Fajar I. Tufail, who is Director of Research and Area Studies at Badan Riset dan Inovasi Nasional, also known as BRIN. He holds a master's degree from Rutgers University and a PhD in social anthropology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Prior to his current position, Dr. Tufail was the head of the Asia Pacific Division of the Research Center for Regional Resources in LIPI. Welcome, Pak Fajar. Last but not least, our third panelist is Megan Huet, who is Executive Director of the American Institute for Indonesian Studies, also known as AIFIS. Megan obtained her Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology and Religion at Florida State University and her Master of Arts in Southeast Asian Studies at the University of California, Berkeley, as well as her Doctor of Philosophy in Southeast Asian Studies at the University of California, Berkeley, with a focus on Indonesian cultural studies of literature, performance arts, and community-based education. Hi, Megan, welcome. And so this special panel is going to be moderated by Alan Feinstein, who is Executive Director of AMINEF, the Fulbright Commission in Indonesia. He has over 35 years experience working for international foundations in Asia, including the Ford Foundation in Jakarta, the Japan Foundation and Toyota Foundation in Tokyo, and the Rockefeller Foundation in Bangkok. Hi, Pa Alan.
Good morning, good evening.
Morning. And without further ado, I would like to pass the floor directly to Mr. Feinstein as the moderator for today's special panel. Mr. Feinstein, I will pass the floor to you. You may have the floor.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. Good morning to everyone. Good evening to everyone where it's evening. I'm Alan Feinstein, the Director of AMINEF, Fulbright Commission in Indonesia, and I'll be moderating this special panel on research collaboration in Indonesia, navigating policies, permits, and partnerships. AMINEF annually supports over 100 Indonesians to study, do research, teach, or undertake professional fellowships in the US. In the pre-COVID years, we also normally welcomed about 60 American Fulbrighters to do research, teach at the high school level as co-teachers of English, or lecturers visiting professors at Indonesian universities. AMINEF staff has always helped the incoming American researchers to acquire the necessary permits and visas that they needed to stay in Indonesia to carry out their projects. We thus have intimate knowledge of the research permit systems and policies of the Indonesian government. These policies do change over time, as do the institutions in charge of them. For instance, in the past, the Ministry of Education and Culture, Dikbud, housed the Directorate General of Higher Education, or DICTI. When President Jokowi first came to office in 2014, DICTI was taken from Dikbud and attached to the Ministry of Research and Technology, which thus became Ristek Dikti. That ministry oversaw research permits and visas for foreign individuals and institutions. Then, in President Jokowi's second term, DICTI returned to Dikbud, and the Ministry of Research and Technology without dictee, was charged with implementing a new research law, including establishing a new agency, BRIN. In 2021, the Ministry of Research and Technology was dissolved, and BRIN was created, replacing it. BRIN is now in charge of research permits for foreign researchers, and in some cases for Indonesian researchers too. There have thus been several changes in the policies and regulations over the last several years, and there is still some confusion about how a foreign researcher, whether senior scholar or professor, a graduate or undergraduate student, or an independent researcher or a research group, can enter the country to carry out short or long-term research. We're very lucky today to have two officials of BRIN to help explain that new agency and its efforts to encourage collaboration with foreign researchers and foreign research institutions and the ground rules for such partnerships. In line with the theme of this conference, Emerging Discourses and Collaborations in a New Age, this panel will focus on the opportunities for collaborations and try to shed some light on some of the new ground rules. Ms. Tri Sundari, Acting Director of Management for Research Permits at BRIN, will give a presentation on ethical clearance and research permits and on BRIN's expectations of how foreign researchers are expected to interact with their Indonesian counterparts. She will help us to understand other BRIN policies, such as how research data and resultant publications are expected to be handled too. Dr. Fajar Tufail, himself a Fulbrighter, I should add, who is Director of BRIN'S Research Center for Area Studies, and AIFIS's own Dr. Megan Hewitt, will both talk about individual and institutional opportunities for partnerships and collaborations. I will serve as moderator. Each speaker will be given 10 minutes for their presentation, after which we will open up to a question and answer session of about 1 hour. And I've tried to group the questions, the possible questions, into certain themes. So we'll try to proceed in a more or less systematic way. We'll see how it works out. Okay, let me hand over the floor then back to the moderator, or I'm sorry, back to the MC, or to Ibu Tri Sundari directly, please.
You can directly proceed to
okay.
Yes.
Okay, then Ibu Tri Sundari, welcome and thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Terima kasih, thank you Pak Alan, thank you MC. Good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you Pak Alan for the introductions. It will give us the framework very well. And thank you for the committee to inviting us from BRIN to share our policy and information in this second AIFIS-MSU conference on Indonesian Studies today. So I would like to start my presentations in the next slide about the profile about BRIN. We already knew and hear from our Deputy Chairman, Professor Agus, in the opening remark that BRIN is an integration from about 48 governmental research institutions across the ministries and agencies in Indonesia. So by having this integration, we integrate all the human resources, including the researchers, infrastructures, and also the funding. And BRIN, we have two roles. Basically, we are as an policy institution, so we are responsible for our national science, technology, innovation policy, as well as we are as an executing agency for research in Indonesia. So we have two main responsibilities. And I would like to give you an overview about our structure. In the next slide, you can see we differentiate the structure into two main parts. If you can see on the right side, we have what we call a research organization which focus on the research activities. I believe Tufail come from the research organization, one of the research organization here. Currently, we have 12. We have 12 research organization that I think is already cover all the field of research. And the next in the left side, it's more the management side. We have 7 deputy chairman of BRIN. 2 out of 7, they responsible for development of the policies. Because in the beginning, I already mentioned that BRIN covered the policy as well as the executing agency. And another deputy chairman are responsible for giving instrument or programs that support the research activities, not only for BRIN researchers, but also outside of BRIN. So for me, sorry, I'm my directorate is under Deputy Office of Research and Innovation Facilitations, which led by Professor Agus Haryono. Okay, we can continue to the next slide. Yeah, in BRIN, I think later on Pak Tufail will elaborate more. Basically, we are encouraged for global engagement through many means, through research activities, capacity building, and etc. etc. So in the area of research activities, in my working unit, we are facilitating for foreign research permit, and Professor Agus in the beginning already mentioned that we're trying to deregulate the regulation. We're trying to make the procedure simpler, but still in the corridor of our national regulation. And we do it through the ethical clearance. So we can continue. This is the legal framework of the ethical clearance, basically the law, our internal regulations. We can continue. Yeah, this is what is different in the previous procedure and the current one. So in the previous one, we did it based on the security clearance as well as the scientific-based review, and reviewed by a committee we call TKPIPA, on which the member of TKPIPA coming from scientists and also representative from security agencies. And yeah, we have a research permit fee. And for now, we do it through ethical clearance. And of course, it will be reviewed by ethics committee in BRIN. We have 5 ethics committees. And we also open of free of charge for the research permit if you have collaboration with the researchers from BRIN. And this clearance ethic is based on the activities of the research. So we do not differentiate based on the length of the research, but focus on the activities of the research. And it has to be applied before the field work. So the ethical clearance is trying to make sure that every methodology that will be applied during the field work is safe, and it can protect the researcher and also the society and any aspect that will relate to the research activities. So this is the link of the clearance ethic. This is basically our homepage, but unfortunately it's still our temporary, so we don't have yet the bilingual, but we are still in the process to make it the new one, with allow the foreign researcher to have more users friendly, because we will provide the website in English as well. Yeah, and the next I just give you, we have 5 ethical committee. And out of 5, we have 2 already in operationalized, and the other 3 are still in finalizing the form, the guideline, and everything. I think this is brief information that I can share, and of course, it will be very welcome to have more discussion in the next session. So thank you, and I give it back to Pak Alan. Alan, I think you're still unmuted.
Sorry. Yes. Thank you. Next up, Dr. Fajar Tufail from the Pusat. I'm trying to figure out the name of this. The Center for Area Studies at BRIN will talk about collaborations and how to encourage collaborations in the future. Please, Dr. Tufail, Dr. Fajar.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Good evening. Terima kasih, Pak Alan. And it is an honor for me to be able to speak in this panel. And then I will try to give you some more brief information on the kinds of collaboration schemes that BRIN has at this moment. So just kind of give you more basic information on what we can offer for foreign scholars and in terms of doing collaboration and collaborative project. Okay, so shall I share the screen by myself or?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, just a minute. Okay. Okay, maybe this part of slide has been briefly introduced by Ibu Lee. Kind of to give you an idea, a basic idea on why collaboration is important for BRIN. Is that one of the aim to BRIN was created is to to increase what the Handoko, the chairman of BRIN, stated, the critical mass. That's why we know that there are so many researchers in Indonesia, and also there are so many researchers coming from outside who are interested in Indonesia, but they are coming and doing research in a very call this dispersed way, So that's why the BRIN was created in order to bring this together, researchers together, and in order to increase the critical mass of BRIN. And there are at least 3 part of the critical mass that support the research ecosystem from the BRIN scheme. Is that the first one, the player, and the second one is the researcher self, and the third one, the academics. So these collaboration schemes created by BRIN is actually trying to bring these 3 categories of quote unquote researchers together so they can collaborate and produce something that is more organized and more in a more systematic way. So I will just talk a little bit about this the right part of the global collaboration. As Bhutri already mentioned earlier, there are at least two different ways or 2 categories. One category is capacity building. Capacity building, it actually applies more to internally to BRIN, but also can also related to other outside party through different scheme like research and so forth. And the second one that I think might more be relevant for you is that mobility program. I will be explaining a little bit in brief that we mean with this mobility program. So basically, if you put all of the collaboration scheme in BRIN, they falls into two major categories, two general categories. The first one, the research mobility program that I already mentioned, and this program was managed by Deputy Chairman for Human Resources and Technology. And this research mobility program is funded by BRIN in the forms of visiting fellowship, oral fellowship, and assistance. There are other collaboration that also related to that program is that research group collaboration, and this research group collaboration was managed by it's a kind of a direct research collaboration, foreign researcher with a particular research organization, research center, or even research group. So this scheme actually it's based on the principle of co-sharing, and BRIN, for example, BRIN give funding for BRIN researcher to do research, and other researchers, foreign researcher or researchers outside of BRIN, coming with their own funding. So they can also do this kind of collaboration. So the first one is a one managed by BRIN, funding provided by BRIN. There are different kind of SIM like a visiting fellowship, postdoctoral fellowship, research assistantship. Second one is kind of more bottom-up collaboration effort conducted by research organization or research center or research group or with foreign parties or someone from outside BRIN. This scheme involves some kind of co-sharing and different kinds of collaborative. So I will briefly explain one the scheme that was managed by BRIN. The first one is degree by research. Is degree by research what means degree by research that actually mostly applies to Indonesian researcher or students who want to do to get degree by research, and BRIN provided tuition and fellowship and also stipends for these students. But this is a little bit difficult, I think, in the U.S. Educational context, because as you probably might be familiar that the U.S. educational context needs some kind of some extensive time to take a coursework. A degree by research does not applies, at least at this moment, does not applies to that kind of program, and mostly that students are only allowed to stay in foreign country for a certain limited time. So this is something that BRIN already aware of, and we are trying to kind of negotiate a different kind of strategy to the U.S. university or U.S. educational institution to that extent that we also use the kind of a scheme for Indonesian students to come to the U.S. under this program. And this is the example of the collaborative partners that currently has, and the bottom part of the slide are still in negotiation. Okay, so just this is the target. At least the BRIN has a target to invite 30 visiting professors per year and 40 visiting research fellow per year, and in also around 84 fellows come to within 1 year. Okay, so this is the most important part of the information actually regarding the two most popular programs at BRIN at the moment is the visiting researchers And visiting researcher applies to anyone, regardless nationality. There can be a U.S. Citizen, can be other citizen, Indonesian citizen, and the schemes actually quite flexible because the visiting researcher can come to Indonesia within from the period of only 1 month up to 1 year. So, but one thing that is more important is that in this scheme, visiting researchers and also postdoctoral fellowship, this is not. It's kind of a little bit different from what you already familiar with in the international context, in which of the visiting researchers program or postdoctoral program is based on individual interest or individual research. But in this context, the BRIN'S program encourage kind of a collaboration, which means that the program, if you want to apply for visiting researchers and postdoctoral researchers, you have to have some to a program that is connected to one or two research project carried out by BRIN researchers, whether in the context of research centers or research group. So this is the notion of collaboration is very strong. So the concept of visiting researcher fellowship and postdoctoral fellowship highlights that there has to be some kind of knowledge exchange between the fellows and the BRIN researcher, because the main objective of this program actually to help Indonesian researcher to extend their capacity as a researcher. So this is something that I have to underline, because most of many questions coming to me with regard to this program, and they always think that this visiting researcher and postdoctoral program is a kind of an individual quote unquote program. So here I will explain that is not the case. So, but that's why when you want to apply for this visiting researcher program and postdoctoral program, I think the best way to do it is just to make contact with one of the research group or research centers or research organization and teams, and then try to work out with them what kind of collaboration scheme of collaboration that can develop while you are visiting fellows or postdoctoral. So this is the difference with the postdoctoral program, just in terms of duration. That postdoctoral program is only for 1 year, so there is no shorter term. But then also in terms of the requirements, that the visiting researcher has to be someone who already got PhD more than 5 years, but postdoctoral is under 5 years. So the other processes is similar. So you have to open an account. You have to submit your application online on the link that available here, and then you have to establish negotiation or communication with one of the research group or research center, and I can tell you that this scheme, postdoctoral or visiting fellowship, is a very good stipend, and can cover your living expenses. But again, I have another information that this fellowship and postdoctoral fellowship program only covers living expenses. So if you want to do research in collaboration with BRIN, you have to find another funding sources. It can be from within the BRIN, or it can be you can apply proposal together with BRIN for extramural funding. Yeah, I think that's all, and yeah, I will be happy to answer if you have any questions about this program. Thank you, Pak Alan.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Fajar. We'll have time for questions. But first, we want to ask Megan Hewitt, the Executive Director of AIFIS, to say a few words about collaborations that AIFIS is hoping to implement and in the future, and the opportunities for such from the American side, especially, or the foreign researcher side. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Butri and Pak Fajar, for giving us this thorough explanation of what's going on at BRIN right now. It is really a comprehensive organization that is BRIN now, and I thank you both for clarifying these details and being sort of willing to open up this Q&A. We are really thrilled to see that BRIN is opening up these opportunities for research collaboration, especially at the individual researcher level, and with the possible sort of the possibility of living stipend support is a very generous offering to the foreign research community, which I know will go a long way in extending the kinds of research collaborations that we can be doing across the global divide. One thing that we've been really thinking about at AIFIS and speaking with other organizations like AIFIS, like AMINEF, as well as we've been in conversation with many of the science attaché groups of the embassies in Jakarta. So as we are moving forward in beginning to think about collaborations with BRIN, we are also pooling resources among organizations that are facilitating foreign researchers in their movement through the new procedures happening at BRIN. So I'm gonna sort of, by way of sort of leading into discussion, I'm gonna cue a couple of questions, Alan, just if that's all right. But one thing in that regards is thinking about how collaboration can be happening both at an individual level, between individual researchers, between foreign researchers and Indonesian institutions, but also a sort of institution to institution collaboration. And that's something that AIFIS, AMINEF, and I know the science attaché officials are all very interested in knowing how it is that institutional collaborations can also help facilitate the smooth movement of our researchers through the new administrative protocols at BRIN. So that's one thing that's been a hot topic of conversation among us, this sort of multi-scalar levels of collaboration. I also want to, like, on the subject of collaboration and coming from sort of AMINEF's perspective, we have a distinct view of what's happening among American research communities who are invested in research in Indonesia. AIFIS is a consortium of 35 member institutions, all representing sort of top scholars of Indonesian studies in America. And I can say that one of the ideological, sort of an ideological baseline of our entire community of scholars is a mission towards collaboration as integral to the development of sound research. That is working with our collaborators in Indonesia, hearing the voices of the communities and the subjects that we study, and making sure that the content that we produce of our research in Indonesia has a public output that can be of use, very broadly speaking, to global communities. So I can say that is a baseline that our community of AIFIS is invested in. One thing about the shifting protocols is that with AMINEF and the embassy officials, we have been aggregating the questions, of course, that our fellows have generated by beginning to move through the protocols. And that's largely what had inspired this roundtable, and what are the core questions that Alan will move us through in a moment. And I suppose I want to highlight that there is already this foreign collaboration, foreign institutional collaboration happening, and sort of this roundtable is such a wonderful starting point for, again, crossing that divide and having these collaborative conversations extend with BRIN as well. But one thing that we are also seeing is that, you know, organizations like AIFIS, like AMINEF, we also take on some of the administrative labor of facilitating researchers, attaining their research permits, collaborating with home institutions in Indonesia. And sort of, I have a question about sort of what role does BRIN see these external institutions within that system as well, sort of beyond just the individual researchers moving through BRIN, but what are the collaborative possibilities for institutional collaboration? So I will end with that, because I know that we really want to get quickly to the Q&A. Because that is where the meat of our conversation will be. So thank you so much, and I'd be happy to continue the conversation about how these collaborative possibilities can work in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I think what we will do, I mean, we're asking people to ask questions through the Q&A on the Zoom, and also apparently through Huva or Wova, or however you pronounce it, though I don't seem to have access to that. Already some questions are appearing in the Q&A. I will exercise my responsibility as moderator here to gather questions in thematically, if I can be allowed. And as Megan said, we had, when planning this session, and we did talk to both Ibu Tri Sundari and Fajar before we held this session, we decided to group some questions, and you'll see that those are already in the agenda, in the description of this panel. And I've refined some of these, and I hope you don't mind if, on behalf of the organizers here, that we ask some general questions first and then open it up for some questions. I notice Anne Rasmussen has a number of very technical questions about particular things on the forum, but perhaps we can get to the more general questions first. And there will be questions for both Fajar and Ibu Tri, I believe. So my question is about the ethical clearance and research permits and visas. Is it right, Ibu Tri, to say that these are three processes along a line? That you have to go through ethical clearance, then you have to get your research permit, then you have to get a visa. Is that correct?
Okay, thank you, Alan, and thank you for the questions. Basically, for the ethical clearance and the foreign research permit is in one package. So ethical clearance is for all the researchers from Indonesia, as well as for the foreign researchers. So for the foreign researchers, you just submit the application through the ethical clearance. So once it is approved by the ethics committee, and it will goes to secretariat to review the administrative one, whether the document complete and whether the foreign researcher has a good track record in the previous activities in Indonesia. So basically, once ethical clearance approved and the document completed, we will issue the research permit. And after that, the foreign researchers, with the help from the Indonesian partner, they submit the visa application to immigration. So it's a basic line for the process right now.
Okay, thank you very much. So ethical clearance then is required in all cases, not only for research involving human subjects.
Okay, so we understand that not all the type of research need ethical clearance. That's why in the beginning, we provide what we call self-assessment. So basically the self-assessment is a set of questions that will help the applicant, the researchers, to categorize whether the research need ethical clearance or not. For the Indonesian researchers, when based on their self-assessment, if it is categorized as not, it doesn't need the ethical clearance, by system we will issue a notification letter that mentioned by the self-assessment your research activities doesn't need the ethical clearance. But for the foreign researchers, actually it will apply the same, but because they also need the research permit, it will goes to the system. So yeah, that's the process.
Okay. All right. Since most graduate students and professors, if they're going to do research and if they have funding for research, have already gone through an ethical clearance process through their university or their institute's institutional research board, they already have clearance. Can that be submitted as a way to speed up the process?
Yeah, we have received this similar question from for many foreign researchers. Basically, we understand that usually they already receive the ethical clearance from the home country, for example, from the universities in the United States. But for certain reason, especially for the research in the area of social, the ethics committee will ask to submit it again. But you can provide us with the ethical clearance acceptance that you already received from the home countries. So it will to some extent it will expedite the process because some of the aspect already reviewed by the ethics committee. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. And can we assume that these BRIN committees are organized by topic? If something is interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary, it will be, how will it be handled by another committee?
Yeah, we do understand that certain research activity will, for example, for the multidisciplinary research will, involve more than one ethics committees. But for the submission, you can choose one in the area that your research is heavily involved in that area. Usually, the ethics committee will see that, okay, this proposal will need to be reviewed by other experts. And in that committee, they will invite that expert to come to their meeting and to discuss and review the proposal together. So basically, you don't need to submit the same proposal to different ethics committees. You just submit once, and the internal process will go through, and they will invite relevant experts to help them in reviewing the proposal.
Thank you for these very clear answers. A couple of more questions, then we'll open it up. This is maybe a sensitive question, but and there are two related questions. We want to know, you say that you've streamlined the process, and unlike the TK PIPA, scholars are on the ethics committee. We also want to know if there are also intelligence and security agency personnel on those committees, and if there are certain topics or certain geographic areas that are off limits, and is that considered as part of the ethical clearance process?
Yeah, for the ethics committee, the member are consists of the active researchers in that field. So there is no other member outside of the researchers.
Mhm.
But basically, if they need, for example, in the disciplinary research, they will invite other experts, other researchers to help the committee in reviewing the proposal. So I can say there is no what you call it, intelligence as a member in the committee, no, because it's an ethical committee.
Right.
And for the locations, it's based on the ethical one. I'm not into in the specific process of the reviewing, but what I can assure is the ethical committee is trying to minimize the negative impact when the researchers goes to the field work. So this is something that we need to bear in mind. So in principle, the ethics committee never, in so far experience for now, they never reject. They never reject the proposal. What we are trying to do is helping the researchers to make the proposal is ethically approved. So they once you submit the proposal, if there is something that based on the committee need to be revised, they will give you a note. Please revise this section by giving blah 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 blah. So basically, the committee do not reject the proposal. They're trying to make the proposal can be ethically approved. That's the principle.
This is good to hear. Thank you very much. Now, one thing that's different from the old process was the issue of visas. And in the past, BRIN, or the agent, TKPIPA, or the agency would help secure the visa by sending information to the immigration department. Now that apparently is no longer the case. So how is it supposed to work? How is someone supposed to get a visa once they have the ethical clearance and the research permit?
Yeah. In the past, RISTEC or RISTEC BRIN was helping the foreign researchers to register the visa applications. But based on the evaluation that we received from immigration, from other stakeholders, they advises us that it should be not RISTEC, because we are the regulator and we are not the one who day by day are in working with the foreign researchers. So that's why immigrations it advises us that the registration of the visa should be assisted by the Indonesian partner. So for example, if you have collaboration with a certain university in Indonesia, if I say, for example, IPB, for example, so IPB will help you to register the visa application by submitting the foreign research permit and ethical clearance that already received from BRIN. That's the way we are doing now.
I see. Hold on. I have a question here from, where is it? From Kevin Fogg. He says in the old system, foreign researchers would also be required to report themselves to Kespangpol in the police office in each province where they conducted research. Usually those provincial offices also required them to get permits and to report themselves to the same offices at the Kabupaten and Kota level. He says, I've often been asked to also get permits from Kabupaten and report myself to the Chamat level. How has the new BRIN process simplified or reduced this subnational permitting?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Yeah, regarding this one, it's unfortunately out of our hand, but what we are can do now, we had communication with our colleagues in the Ministry of Home Affairs in Kemendagri, on which the Kesbangpol is under their coordinations. So they already mentioned that what they are doing now in Kesbangpol is not a permit. Rather, it's a permission, or not permission, what they call, they're just administrative process, because the decentralization in some region, when there are foreign researchers, it's not only for foreign researchers, but for other foreigners who are doing the activities in Indonesia, they need to go to Kesbangpol, but once they receive the letter from BRIN, it's actually they will process. So there is no review, there is no permit reviewed by the Kesbangpol or Kemendagri. They just apa ya Pak, melaporkan aja, apa itu in English, you can translate it
Report
very well.
themselves.
Yeah, just report. So it's not a permit process, just report themselves that, okay, I'm from United States and I already get the research permit from BRIN, I got the visa, and I will enter your region. So just report. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Report.
There's a question about the visas again. I know you don't represent immigration, but and researchers understand they will receive a research visa, this C315, but at the moment people are being told that it's not available online for application, and yet the embassies and consulates abroad are also not issuing visas. Do you have any information about whether the research visa will be issued, or can it be applied for online?
Yeah, Pak Alan, we received these questions a couple weeks ago, and we already, informed this to our colleague in immigrations. So actually, the visa of C315 can be accessed online, but I think there is a technical problem in the system. That's why still the system still, I don't know, can I say broken? But I haven't checked it again. But there is no way they have to submit it online. That's what we received, information received from our colleagues in immigrations. But yes, unfortunately, we need to wait until the system is, in life again.
Okay. Finally, and before I open it up to some of the other questions, there's a kind of a question that constantly crops up, and it was discussed at the Association for Asian Studies meeting in Honolulu recently. What about people, scholars or students who come to Indonesia for a short term, they just for a few weeks or a month or something, to follow up on research they've done, or to set up a research project, or to discuss possibilities for collaboration, but focusing on research, or even interviewing people or talking to colleagues? Do they also need a research permit?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we do not, we focus on the ethical clearance based on the research activities. We do not see the length or duration of the research. So once you come to Indonesia, for research, I don't know, you can define better than me what the activities of research is. So yeah, you need the research, the visa, the C315. Regardless, your duration is only very short. But if you just come to Indonesia to give a lecture, or attending the workshop, I don't think that it categorized as a research activity, so you don't need that kind of visa.
Right. I think people have become a little bit afraid of what will happen if they don't have the right permission to do research, because in the new research law there are criminal sanctions for not having the proper permits. So that sort of instilled a bit of fear. Anyway, if the process is as smooth as it eventually will become, we hope, then maybe it is still possible for short-term researchers to get the permits. That's, I guess, what we can only hope. Okay, I think I'll now move to this question and answer here. And there are specific questions. Here's one, I think, for Fajar, from Sulfikar Amir. He says he understands BRIN now has 20,000 employees. How do they make sure that everyone is productive? Second, with the implementing of co-working space style in which BRIN researchers no longer have a fixed space to work in, what is the impact on researcher productivity?
Okay, thank you, Mas Aso, for the questions. This is actually something that is becoming not really a challenge for us with this number of employee. Around 20,000. Actually, between 16,000, 70,000 employee. Of course, there are some what you call some kind of gap here. Some of the researchers are coming from the ministry, the research organization at the ministry, who are not really or probably have a limited experience doing actual field work, for example. And then now at BRIN they have to do extensive field work, and then they have to do it by themselves. Usually they're doing research by receiving kind of order from the institution at the ministry to do some particular project. But now at BRIN, they have to write a proposal. They have to compete with other researchers to get funding from BRIN. So yeah, there is of course at the end there will be some kind of gap that is created actually by this kind of different experiences. But now we at BRIN, and especially the research organization and research centers, are trying to help them in order to go through these, processes, and then working with the former researchers, for example, those who were at LIPI or other institutions, work together. So if there is if there is a gap, there's not that much difference between. But we are still, you cannot expect that everybody will be the same or will have the same kind of standard. But there are some program at BRIN, especially internal at BRIN, especially shaped for this kind of mitigating. And the other thing about the co-working space, as far as I understand from the explanation provided by Pak Kepala BRIN recently, that the co-working space will be hopefully will be applied permanently. So which means that you don't have to go to the office every day, but you have still to make active involvement, or to have active involvement in the process. And how do you do that? And it depends on the character of each particular research centers, because some research centers actually requires people to come together and to talk. For example, like those research center who work on the laboratorium basis, and then people have to come to this laboratorium very often and discuss and so forth. But for social science and humanities, the situation will be different, depending also on factors on policy of centers. For example, in my centers, I have the new researchers in my centers coming from 5 different provinces. live in Pangkal Pinang, somebody live in Bandung, the other live in, even one researcher live in Buton, for example. So the thing that, yeah, of course, this geographical difference create a very big challenge for us how to coordinate research. But since the policy of the BRIN, research is not the responsibility of research actually falls into the hand of the research group, not the research center. So now it depending on the way how research groups can bring these people together and discuss this, processes or research process online, or maybe coming offline once in maybe 1 month or 2 months. It depends. So it's all of these the process is now it's a kind of a bottom up. So there's no receipt that applies once for all. So it depending on how research group organize their research activities. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
I think that helps. There's a short question here for you also from Arini. Well, I don't know if it's a short answer, but a short question. Is there, from Arini Utami, is there improvement and simplification of financial reporting for funding provided by BRIN? Some researchers avoid applying for funding from the Indonesian government due to the rigid financial report requirements.
Yeah. I think depending on if you're collaborating with BRIN with your own funding, then you don't have to, like I mentioned in my slide earlier, that there are at least two schemes. So if you collaborating with a BRIN researcher, so you don't have to, if you have your own funding, you don't have to do this kind of financial reporting to BRIN. But if you're using the funding from BRIN, for example, you apply from one of two programs at BRIN, and you got the funding from BRIN, then yes, you have to remember that this money is public taxpayer money, which and then the way how you report it, it depends on the regulation that's set up by the Ministry of Finance. So the BRIN actually the system of financial accounting at BRIN follows what the Ministry of Finance has already stipulated. So we cannot change that. I mean, it's similar to other ministry.
Beyond BRIN's ability to improve that. Okay, there's another, thank you very much. There's another question here for Ibu Tri, and this is from Dadi Darmadi from Bandung, and he's from an institution that is trying to help one of the foreign researchers come to Indonesia. And as we mentioned before, the host university, there's a burden put on the host university to seek the visa for that person, or to guarantee the visa for that person. So he's wondering, how long is the process? I wonder, this is adding to his question, is there may be some universities that are unused to this, and they live far from the local immigration office, and it may be really a burden for them, and it may make it even a longer process for the foreign researcher to get a visa. Has BRIN thought about this problem? I realize you're not giving visas, but it is an issue for many foreign researchers and the institutions that host them.
Yeah, for universities or institute that currently new in having collaboration with the international partners, yes, I know that it's not easy for them to facilitate the visa process. That's why we are in BRIN is scheduling to give like socializations and technical, and we will invite the people from immigration to give the informations, and in technicality they will give us like a bimbingan teknis gitu Pak, technical training how to apply or register the visa for this research permit, sorry, for the research activities. So they will get the understanding and know how to in technical way to submit the visa. But if hopefully soon we will scheduling. But if certain people would like to do it very urgent, you can contact us and we will try our best to facilitate how to do it. Yeah,
that's very helpful. I wonder if we can move to another category that we had talked about in the when announcing this panel. And I know you may not be in charge of this, Ibu Tri, but I still have to address my questions to you, or Fajar, if you can answer. Do all, once the research is finished, as the foreign researcher comes and collaborates with an Indonesian researcher, does every publication have to be co-authored? Somewhere we have read about this, and this presents a problem, for instance, for PhD students who usually are not allowed to, they have to do their dissertation on their own and they can't co-author something. Does everything have to be co-authored?
Yeah, maybe Fajar can help later on. I just mentioned there is an obligation from our law that foreign research has to have a local partners, and they have to, of course, by its contributions to the research activity, they can have right to be co-author or other type of, scientific based publication or other things. But of course, it's based on each of the contributions. So I just can mention that's what we have in our law. But in practical way, maybe Pak Fajar can help.
Yeah, I think for dissertation is pretty much clear, Alan. That there is no co-author for dissertation, but what we expect that the students or the dissertation mention that some kind of acknowledgement. Yeah, and I think everybody, mostly in the US, they always do that. I mean, to give a written acknowledgement that you got you did this project with the help of Professor A, or maybe someone at BRIN mention the name, and if you got the funding from BRIN, and then mention the schemes, the collaboration scheme that you are involved in there. So I think for dissertation that is sufficient. But the question is for international journal. Yes, of course, we expect that the person also can write a co-authored journal, international journal with their sponsors. So I think this is also important in terms of knowledge exchange. In the process of authoring co-author journal, I think the discussion, negotiation is very important. So
the question is it an aspiration or is it a requirement? I mean,
it's a requirement for journal. It's a requirement. Yeah, because if you, for example, if you get the funding through the fellowship program, and then you get permission to do research, as a visiting researcher or as a postdoctoral researcher, and you got the already the research visa. One of the requirement clearly mentioned that you have to have a co-authored international journal publication. So this is a requirement. But for the research permit that falls outside of this category of funding, I think I don't know, Bu Tri, if there is a requirement for example, student to write an international journal publication. I'm not sure whether that will be a requirement. But it's kind of a more himbauan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's helps also. The other category of question is about the requirement that primary data should be stored with BRIN and kept in Indonesia, primary research data. Now, there are a lot of questions that arise from researchers about this. It's not ethically appropriate to share the names of informants. So how do you protect informants when you store this primary data? Can the data be anonymized, for instance? And how do you protect this data from being used or published without the permission of the original scholars? Ibu Tri, can you help us think through these things? I realize you may not be in charge of this.
Yeah, this is one of my colleagues' responsibility, but I can share that. Yeah, as law is mentioned, the primary data has to be repository in Indonesian database for the primary one, and it doesn't mean that everybody can see that data. So it's strictly only certain people involved in that research. So even between the parties or among the parties, they can have kind of an agreement what kind of data that they have to be repository, and how you will organize that, who can see what data, you can manage that. So it doesn't mean that it is open data that everybody can see the data. No, it just make sure that what we call it, it's especially if we have collaboration with Indonesia, yes, the data has to be saved in Indonesia, but it's not publicly open. It's only a certain people that involved in those research that can access.
So the researcher can put restrictions on who can access that information.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure,
okay.
sure.
That's useful to know. All right, Megan Hewitt, I believe you have a question.
Yes, it was a little bit of a returning to the question regarding co-authorship. And that's interesting to know that it sort of depends on, it might depend on what kind of funding you're receiving, whether it's coming from BRIN or if it's purely an external source. I can say that, at AIFIS and I think also at AMINEF, we are very committed to making sure that the scholars whose work we facilitate in Indonesia has public expression, right? It informs of public lectures, conferences such as this. And my question is, are there other options for the co-authorship question that are not exclusively publication related? Because that is a difficult one for our research community, one that I think we all aspire to, but in practice is quite difficult. And to add that requirement for every research permit, I imagine there would be sort of a backlog of things that need to be published before new research wants to be done, just because the publication process can be so lengthy as well. So my question is just more about, could we envision other outlets by which co-authorship is presented in more public forums, webinars, lecture series? And I guess this question is slightly tied to I realize that the regulations around sort of Indonesian researchers and their advancement is in their institutions is very much tied to their publication in international Scopus recognized journals, correct? So my question is that largely the incentive of the co-authorship question? Just a side question, more about the sort of, can we envision other opportunities for public output of research?
Will answer Pak Fajar duluan.
Ibu Sri or Ibu Fajar, silakan.
Yeah, thank you again. The basic principle actually is not scopus thing, because we are actually also forced to do the scopus thing by ourselves, regardless, we have to write a co-authorship with co-author journal, article journal. But actually the things behind this requirement actually in terms more kind of ethical responsibility, like if you work with Indonesian researchers, and then Indonesian researcher, for example, provided you with kind of not only information but also exchanges, and more information, then he or she has to be acknowledged as also as part of the collaborator in the research. I think it's becoming more common in international context to do that. So yes, there is some cases like Alan mentioned about dissertation. You cannot do a collaborative dissertation. Yes, we understand that, but whenever you can you can put your collaboration in public, that will be much better. Regardless, this will be a journal or maybe a webinar or anything. And I have someone who also always mentioned, for example, I'm sorry, not that's my name in much of the my many webinar that she already done. So, and acknowledging that kind of things. So it's kind of a more becoming not in terms of a scopus thing, but kind of a more ethical issues. So, but because BRIN is very concerned that many foreign researchers coming to Indonesia doing research as he or she doing that by her or himself, but actually they need to collaborate it. So there is no acknowledgement at all for these local people or local scholars or local institutions. So that is becoming the kind of a backdrop of the concern.
That's very clear. That's very helpful. Okay, I have two questions here from the floor. One is for either Putri or Fajar, from Christian Lenz. He's made contact with a sponsor at BRIN for an upcoming project. Does he need a host institution in addition to his BRIN sponsor, or is BRIN collaboration enough to get the ethical clearance and research permit? I assume he has outside funding.
Sorry, so for example, the foreign researcher got the foreign funding, and would like
his sponsor or his counterpart is BRIN itself. Does he need yet another host institution to help him get a visa, for instance?
No, the colleagues in BRIN will help yeah.
Okay, that should help. Now there's a question from Anne-Marie Murphy. If a foreign researcher in the past committed to RISTEC before BRIN to co-author with an Indonesian, but then did not complete the article because the research was disrupted by the pandemic, will that jeopardize future BRIN research permits?
So they got already the permit, but due to the pandemic, it's already passed. Is it correct?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that if Anne is talking about herself, Anne-Marie, then she already did the research and she collaborated with an Indonesian researcher, but the research couldn't be completed because of the pandemic. So when she comes back to apply, let's say for ethical clearance research permit, will that fact in her past affect whether or not she can get a new research permit?
No, we can process the normal one, and you can say that you in the past you already received the permit, blah blah blah, and we will consider it.
Right. Okay. And Rasmussen had quite a lot of questions about the forms, but I don't think I'll read them out now. But she does wonder about multiple entry. Is it possible when you're coming for a long time research to go in and out? I guess that's a visa question more than a
visa.
Research
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible for the visa. Yeah.
It should be possible. Okay. What else do we have here?
Alan,
yeah, please, Megan.
to extend a little bit of the question that Anne posed. Anne is one of our consortium members and a scholar who already in much of her published work has foregrounded collaboration. So she at AIFIS is kind of a model example of, I think, the kind of researchers we want to see working in Indonesia. We had asked her about 3 weeks ago. She currently is wanting to conduct her research again in Indonesia, like Alan said, and just started the process the other day. And Ibu Tri, thank you for helping us facilitate some of her getting a logon and access code. So one thing we discovered in these first sort of 3 weeks we're trying it out is the online login system is still maybe a little bit glitchy. They're still working out some of those kinks. So I think sort of if we could get a sense of sort of to calibrate our research community's expectations around when we sort of think this process is going to be sort of fully formed and ready for all of our researchers to hit the ground running. Alan, I would default to you. You've been pushing through Fulbright researchers, trying to push through Fulbright researchers since about December. If I'm not mistaken, upwards of about 60 researchers. And I don't think any of them have their permitting yet. Granted, that has all happened in the process of this move. So maybe speaking a little bit to the administration.
I can say that I've met with some researchers, and they have all, of course there are glitches and there are hiccups in the process, but they all have received their ethical clearance. The ones that I talked to, there are about, I don't know, 8 or 9 of them that were on a phone call with us the other day. It's not quite 60 who are all researchers. Some are coming to teach, and that's another thing. They have to get work permits, and that's also difficult. Or even more difficult, I should say. But the researchers seem to be having good experiences. What they did say, and I should raise this, is that when they have to pay their fee to BRIN, that there are problems with the bank account, and they getting through with the email that they're given to pay the fee in order to get the final research permit, with which they then go to immigration. There are glitches there, so that may be useful for Ibu Tri to know. Maybe that will be ironed out in the next, while, we hope. And I mean, since we're talking AIFIS and AMINEF, what we want to know is there some way that we can help as institutions? Of course, we always help the individuals who apply to us and who get grants of support from us. But do you think that AMINEF and AIFIS can sort of work out agreements with BRIN to kind of fast track the system? I mean, somebody who's received a Fulbright or an AIFIS award, presumably they're bona fide as researchers. Could that help in speeding up the process? Getting them to Indonesia and doing their research? Ibu Tri or Fada?
Yeah, I think it is good if institutionally we can have a collaboration amongst AIFIS, AMINEF, and BRIN, because as Pak Fajar already presented, that we have many schemes that are, potentially can collaborate with our international partners. And by having an agreement, it will cover not only 1 or 2 schemes, but you can access to many schemes, or you can access to all schemes that are eligible for the international partners. So I think it would be a great idea, initiative by Alan and Ibu Megan. Yeah.
And I'm sure it's true for other countries, the British Council and the German Day and the others who fund research and send many researchers to Indonesia, or would love to collaborate with Indonesia and help, as you are doing, to keep the process smooth. It would be good to share that with them as well. All right, Anne Rasmussen has another question, which is, Is it possible to get ethical clearance and research permit and then travel to Indonesia, I suppose while you're waiting for that to happen, for a short trip, 2 to 4 weeks for a conference or workshop with just a tourist visa?
Yeah, if just for attending the conference, I think you don't need the research permit or even a certain visa for research. So yeah, just come and visit.
Okay, that's great. Okay, are there any other questions here?
As a follow-up to that question, to Putri, that means that it is fine for a researcher to be in Indonesia while they are applying for their research visa, or no? Would they have to and come back in on research once they receive? So let's say in Anne's case, she went to attend a conference while she has currently already started her application process for research permitting. If she happened to be in Indonesia while that permit was issued, would she be able to get her visa while she's there? Again, that's likely a question more for immigration.
Yeah, I'm not sure to answer that. Yeah, sorry.
Get a lot from our scholars. And one thing that our scholars, tourist visas are actually a good way for our researchers to visit and get to know the communities they want to work with, not doing research, but volunteering, forming those connections, meeting the people that they are going to work with. And I know that there is a cost barrier to being able to do that. But I know that's likely where that question is coming from Anne, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know it's getting to be nighttime in the U.S. And I hope we've covered most of these questions here. Yeah, I believe I've answered or posed the questions that people have put here, and we've gone through the list of questions. Megan, do you have any other further questions for Fajar or Putri?
Yeah, can I have just answering your question about fast tracking the processes through more institutional collaboration? I think that is what we been actually looking for, and we are very much will encourage this kind of institutional collaborations. If AMINEF, AIFIS, or any other party like the AAD or the Council or Japan Data Foundation or whatever, have some kind of formal collaboration in place, then I think the ethical clearance will take much easier job to speed up the process, because you already have reliable partners in Indonesia, and you're coming to Indonesia as some kind of umbrella agreement. So that will be much easier. So yeah, we are at least in my research organization, Social Science and Humanities, we are very much eager, and we are looking forward to have some kind of institutional collaboration. So
that's very good. As you know, most Fulbrighters and probably AIFIS grantees are Indonesianists in the sense that they are studying the society and culture and environment of Indonesia. So I think that would be a very, very profitable if we can work out some understanding agreement among ourselves and solve the problems before they become problems.
yeah.
And I think your answers here, your statements here are all extremely positive. And the fact that you're, helping smooth things and streamline things is very much appreciated. I think, before this really gets off the ground and becomes as smooth as we hope it will, there will be these hiccups and these issues. But I think eventually the future looks quite positive. I see Dr. Robert Hefner, the president of AIFIS there. And I wonder if Bob, you want to say anything or ask a question. You can, I don't know how to unmute you, but maybe there we go. Can you unmute yourself?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I did mute myself and I went offline earlier because I was eating dinner. And there's nothing more un-Indonesian and actually just generally impolite about being on Zoom than having somebody eat. So no, I just want to thank, I want to thank everyone who and our BRIN colleagues in particular for this very, very helpful. And actually I share, as Megan and Alan both said, I share the impression that this is both a very significant and a very positive change. I understand, of course, we understand, of course, that in a change as momentous and far-reaching and involving as many personnel as this, there are going to be challenges. But I know at the same time, we at AIFIS appreciate all that you've done, and we look forward, as Megan said earlier, we look forward to working with you as a partner whenever you feel so inclined to invite us to play that role, so as to smooth collaboration and ultimately expand collaborations between Indonesian and American scholars. So thank you for a wonderful presentation this evening. And again, my apologies. It's late night here in the United States and I was eating, you know, a 10 o'clock dinner.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. And I really want to thank Ibu Tri and Fajar for being here and for joining us, and Megan for allowing this to happen. I will hand back the floor to our MC, but I'm extremely grateful. If there's any way we can all clap to thank our speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Feinstein. Thank you also all the panelists. I guess thank you for the very fruitful presentations and also discussions on the policies, permits, and also partnerships regarding the research collaboration in Indonesia. I believe we all found it very insightful, especially for the researchers who are interested to do the research here in Indonesia. We are looking forward for many collaborations in the future, I believe. And also thank you for the participants for your enthusiasm throughout the special panel. And before we close this session, allow me to remind you all for the rest of today's sessions. Later at 6 until 7:30 p.m. Western Indonesian time, or tomorrow for 7 until 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, we will have our parallel sessions too. And right after that, we will have our keynote session with Professor Tania Lee from University of Toronto, discussing the topic collaborative research in practice, challenges and possibilities at 7:40 until 9:10 p.m. Western Indonesian time, or 8:40 until 10:10 a.m. Eastern time. And before I close again this session, please check out our exhibitor center of the conference platform, WUVA, where we have assembled a variety of publishers, arts groups, nonprofit, and educational organizations, of course, to share more information about their work. And some of these booths will hold live exhibitor sessions as well during the conference. And we will announce the times and links to the exhibitor live sessions through the conference platform later on. So stay tuned for that. And once again, thank you all. I'll see you in the next sessions. Stay safe and healthy wherever you are. Good morning and good evening.